No. In fact, we're going to talk to Charles Feldman in a minute, so now's a good time to have a look at this quite remarkable piece of video yesterday shot outside the White House, I think, with Donald Trump and Elon Musk having a look over some Tesla cars.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow.
I get this other side.
That's beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. It's just a brake.
Yeah, it's just a brake and an accelerator.
I don't want to
Give a secret service mod attack.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. There's no gears.
This is really amazing. It's really amazing. Let's take a look at it. Think Biden could get into that car? I don't think so.
You can't help it. Charles, a very good morning to you. Charles Feldman's here. The start of that video is actually even funnier when they kind of walk out the door and they see this kind of collection of cars and Elon Musk going, just pick one, you know. Surely that's not the first time he's been in a Tesla, though.
Well, I don't know. He doesn't actually get to drive many cars, right. President Trump. He's usually driven around, even when he was just a real estate, developer in New York. It may very well be one of the few times he's actually been behind a wheel.
Right. Yes, I suppose so. He's behind the wheel of quite a lot at the moment, though, isn't he, with the tariffs that are being brought in. We've just heard this morning the European Union are going to impose retaliatory measures on US goods starting on 1st of April. I don't imagine he'll worry too much about that in terms of, how much stuff America sells to the EU. But the markets are a bit jittery. I mean, is this going to go on for a while, do you think?
Well, the markets are jittery because, nobody knows from one day to the next what Mr. Trump intends to do with his tariffs. On Monday, there are tariffs. On Tuesday, he's increasing them. On Wednesday, he's decreasing them. Right. That kind of uncertainty, as you know, it does not go over well with investors. Investors like some degree of stability, and when they sense that there isn't any stability, that in addition to the fact that some recent economic indicators here in the U.S. have not exactly been great. So when you add that along with this sort of very quick vacillation on tariffs, it makes people very, very nervous, and you see it reflected in the markets.
And Americans, bless them, don't like to lose money, do they? So, I mean, even those who voted for Trump will not be happy if at the end of the year they're finding that, their 401ks are not worth what they used to be and their pensions are diminishing.
Yeah, well, that's precisely right. And not only the 401ks going down, but these tariffs, most economists, I think correctly, predict that if these tariffs actually come to pass, it will raise prices for a lot of the very goods that people who voted for Mr. Trump wanted him to bring those prices down. Grocery items, automobiles, home mortgages because of the increased price of building material for homes. So, I mean, he's walking a very, odd tightrope at the moment, because if he wins, if his hunches are correct, and he obviously thinks they are, and if he thinks that these tariffs will win more favorable conditions for the U.S. and bring more manufacturing back to the U.S., then people who voted for him are going to be very ecstatic. On the other hand, if, as I just mentioned, if it turns out that prices for some very basic everyday commodities go up rather than down, which he had promised would happen when he was running for the presidency, that is not going to go over well, even with his most ardent MAGA supporters.
No, quite. Charles, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Charles Feldman, US political analyst there, reporting into us. I mean, I guess it all comes down to, Trump's instincts again, doesn't it? I mean, as we saw with the peace deal with Russia and Ukraine, he so far seems to have been getting that right, even though there have been a few bumps perhaps on the way. Same goes for the economy, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that the thing that Trump has is he has that hinterland, obviously, as a successful businessman, and he's bringing it into government. And I think a lot of people would like to look at Trump and think, well, actually, he's just somebody who is full of a lot of hot air. But actually, when you look at difficulty. Nobody was expecting when people said, you know, he had that quip, he was going to sort the Ukraine conflict in a day.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was like, okay, that's a line.
Right.
But it looks like he's going to sort it within 100 days.
Yes.
Of taking office,
and certainly sooner than anybody else
and this was a
do.
conflict that had no end in sight under Joe Biden.
Right.
There was simply no resolution to it. We've seen the hostages released, or not all of them, but at least some of the Israeli hostages released from Gaza, from Hamas, as a result of Donald Trump.
And we've also seen the other Arab states around Gaza actually having conversations about what to do about it, as opposed to doing nothing.
Yeah, and they've come up, you know, Donald Trump, for instance, Donald Trump said, you know, he wanted to turn Gaza into, the Riviera and a sort of, and everybody had a sort of shock horror reaction to it. But then Egypt and Jordan came up with a plan for their own, £50 billion regeneration project, where actually that wouldn't have happened if suddenly, you know, and this is something that people like Greg Swenson, Republicans overseas, often talk about. You know, what Trump does is he throws a grenade into the room. Yeah. It sparks people into life, and it says, actually, we need to come up with a solution. Because if we don't do something, Donald Trump's going to do something, and we're not going to like it.
The grenade's going to blow up.
And that's going to cause... So he gets that reaction because, you know, the Middle East conflict had no end in sight under Biden, and it would have, you know, the status quo would have stayed if Harris had won the election back in November. Right. And suddenly now we're getting closer to a peace in the Middle East. We're not there yet, obviously, and certainly in Europe, we can only hope that, you know, given the rhetoric, you know, I think he's confounded his critics again, but of course people are often silent on this, turning around and actually having quite a hard line. You heard it there from Marco Rubio in that excerpt you played. You know, the ball is now in Russia's court. He's there. Trump is obviously there for peace, but it will of course mean some really difficult concessions and choices that we might otherwise not have wanted to make.
No, but you know, you can't. Everything comes at a price, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's have a look at what Mark Carney has to say. He's of course now the Prime Minister of Canada, even though he wasn't actually elected the Prime Minister of Canada. Former Bank of England chief, of course. Here's his response to the tariffs.
America is not Canada, and Canada never ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form. We didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
Yes, well, he talks a good game, but of course Canada had tariffs on American goods long before Trump actually put tariffs on Canadian goods, so he's not entirely being honest there, is he?
This was our former neutral government
so
of the Bank of England.
So called. I know.
The new Labour...
Right, but the bizarre thing is that it turns out, because of the way the Canadian Constitution works, he can't take part in any debates, and he can't actually vote in anything because he wasn't elected. So it's all very weird, very Canadian,